Steve, what you can see on screen.
What I can see on screen is a beautiful colored slide with very nice blues and oranges.
Yeah, so we've been thinking about who's watching us teach, and this can vary from sometimes people coming in to observe our classes because we're being evaluated, to colleagues, to sometimes parents has been noted, and so forth. So we're going to take a little bit of a look at three main things: the people, the purpose, and the process, focusing most of our time on the process. And as Steve said earlier, I'm just going to give a quick overview of some of these things and also look at some of the responses from the poll that we've had this week and your participation from as well. So if that's me in the middle, then yeah, pretty much my first evaluation then had from my teacher trainer or head teacher, sometimes maybe mentors. And generally, they're observing us to see how we're doing, maybe evaluating our teaching and also giving us helpful feedback and suggestions. And we also get a chance sometimes to watch them too. Hopefully we do. But I understand that's not always the case. We also have our colleagues, our peers, and so on. They may be peers from outside our context. And we sometimes get chances to watch them teach. Often, like when I first started teaching, I got a chance to watch senior teachers and learn from what they were doing. And my first trainer also encouraged us to watch each other as new joiners and new teachers, and that was really helpful too. And then, as mentioned in the poll, people also having parents, prospective parents, as well as current parents and students watching their classes, and sometimes administration who may or may not have any teaching background coming in to watch, either just because they're curious or interested, or because they also have some evaluation or role to play there. And then occasionally, there may be also researchers coming in to either watch us or watch the teacher or the teacher trainer, and the process of teacher development that happens between those two. And of course, many of you actually also respond to say that you're in that teacher trainer or head teacher mentor role. So you may actually be doing the observing from that perspective. And then, of course, as many people have experienced over the last year, especially, the recording of their own classes, either through choice or because they needed to, because of their school regulations and so on. But we really want to look at how we can really use this as a teacher development tool to look at our own teaching.
So let's just take a moment there. That's a really good outline of all the people involved in observations. And everybody in the audience, we'd love to know, how many times have you been observed? So if you want to type something like been observed 3 times or 26 times or whatever, you could also type I observed 3 teachers or 5 teachers. That would be fun to see in the audience of people we have now, what the range is.
And just while they're doing that, Steve, how about yourself?
In a previous life, I was assigned to actually train trainers and then go and watch all the teachers who were actually teaching the textbook we were using. So I've been all over Japan and watched over 100 different teachers teaching the same kinds of classes. As far as being observed, with 20 years in the high school and 9 years in the elementary school, I've been observed more times than I can count. Right. And I finally got so used to it that I didn't, I didn't care at all. I learned to not change anything. But boy, was I full of anxiety the first few times, hey?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I used to ask people, a couple of the lines that stuck in my head would, people would say, yeah, observations are a necessary evil, or I'd rather go to the dentist and have teeth pulled out than be observed, Another woman I remember, she had a great class, but she said, I'm so stressed out, I have no recollection of what happened in my class.
Right.
So it's hard to even learn anything. And
Yes.
the very last one is the teachers who've said, yeah, I get observed, but I never learn anything from those observations. So I feel bad about that.
Mm.
And that it's like observations have this bad reputation, it seems.
Yeah, often they are definitely high stress, and we might take a look at how we can approach them in a different way to make it a more positive experience. That's what we'd like to look at today.
Mm. And looking into the audience now, we've got Rhett saying 24 times in the past 2 years I was observed. Again here, I observed 21 teachers twice in a term.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Been observed 20 times plus by Jenny. Yeah, Thano saying, observed many students in my class. Kevin doing the Delta, observed 10, 12 times, and on and on. So it's most people are saying that it's been over 10 times that they've been observed, so everybody has to deal with this. And I think what we're trying to do tonight is look at the potential and the positive side of observations, not focus on the bad experiences or the less than useful experiences, but really focus on the as a professional development method.
Yeah, so sometimes we do get some feedback from parents and admin staff about things that went well, or people liking your lessons, etc. Occasionally we get things from researchers and so on, but we're not going to focus on those so much today. And sorry, my fault. We'll be focusing on the other areas indicated by the orange arrows for professional development. Just skimming back to the poll, as I promised earlier, you can see that this, hopefully it's big enough for you on large screen. If you're on a smaller screen or on a mobile device, then please bear with us. But basically, most of the respondents talked about being observed by someone evaluating their teaching. So this is by far the most kind of the biggest, most common experience for most of us. And but also this can include being observed by a superior mentor to help us with our own professional development. And then earlier we talked about observing teachers to learn from them. And this is actually the second most popular, most common answer, I should say. And also a surprising number, actually, this one really did surprise me, about how many teachers actually also do the evaluation out of those that responded. So we have a lot of people in that role, including ourselves. And then sometimes we observe teachers to give feedback, so that part may be part of mentoring or development, not just evaluating. And then being observed for others teachers professional development. So we may be the senior teacher and people are observing our classes. Lastly, I'm just going to highlight one more, which was observing my own classes for professional development. So there's about 83 people answered that one. And I think the first time I did this was maybe about 10 years ago. But until then, maybe a little bit more, when we did masters, and I'd already been teaching for about 10 years. But before that, had never recorded a class. And that really kind of changed my perspective.
I was telling you earlier the same thing. I said for 20 years in the high school, observed endlessly by other teachers and staff, never once receiving feedback, just being observed. Yeah.
Okay, so these are the areas we're focusing on today. And from looking at the people, then a little bit about the purpose. So a lot of the time we see teacher evaluation and kind of a very judgmental approach, and that causes us a lot of stress. It could be sometimes it's, for me, for example, initial teacher training, but then end of probation period in my first job after 2 months, and then end of contract, whether you're going to get contract renewal, sometimes people for promotions, etc. And people in public sector as well, they get evaluated sometimes by school inspectors and so forth. And then on the other side, which kind of we can get a lot more from, is obviously the teacher training, education, development side. However, it's not really a versus, I think. So I want to see it more as kind of this continuum. And kind of we can exist and our teaching observations lie somewhere between one end and the other. And we can also look at how we can shift maybe some of those teacher evaluations that are more judgmental to becoming more useful with us through dialogue with the people who are doing teacher evaluations, and also how we can make, if we're doing the observing and doing teacher evaluations for teachers, how we can also make that more helpful in terms of professional development.
So at iTDi, we've been doing iTDi as this kind of social enterprise for the past 10 years now. And we have just had so many experiences working with teachers. And I've said that we've grown to love doing observations or being observed based on just seeing how much teachers have been able to grow or change or develop. So it's really been, that's how this topic came out tonight, in fact, in looking at what are some of the biggest things we've learned recently. And one of them is the efficacy or the beauty, the benefits, the potential of classroom observations as professional development, hey?
Yes, and again, you know, people, they come through the iTDi TESOL certificate course, then overwhelmingly one of the things that they say is how much, you know, watching themselves teaching and doing so, you know, 12 times, not just once or twice, but over a sustained period, really helps them to notice things and affect positive change in their teaching. So that's really kind of the big thing, just like also friends who've done Delta and so forth. So really, this is what it's about, is making it work for us. Okay, and Steve, would you like to take a look and let me know what's going on in the comments at all?
Yeah.
Any questions as well?
It's hard to keep up. Thank you, everybody, for making it hard to keep up. There are lots of comments about what's important and things that we're going to be going into. And there's also a couple of kind of negative stories of observations or the downside. And again, we acknowledge that exists, but we just like to look on the positive side of spend our time talking about what can be great about observations and focus on the nuts and bolts of how we can benefit from them, rather than we can get together later and complain about the.
For sure. Everyone needs to vent from time to time, as we've all done in our time. So we're going to take a look slightly at the processes and think about in terms of what we can do before, during, and after. And I'm not going to touch on everything, but some of the key things. So before presentations, before teacher observations and classroom observations, one of the most important thing I think is about giving advance notice. I have had it being told, you know, a minute beforehand that someone's going to come and observe a class and not knowing why or what it's for and so on. And it just adds to that stress level too. Usually though, in good teaching situations, for example, I've had a week's notice, and there's also been a discussion about, you know, the aims or the purpose of the observation, but also asking, you know, what are the aims or purpose of my class, my lesson? What are my students like? What am I trying to do? The aims and objectives, and maybe even talked about a lesson plan and some of the teaching things that are going on. In terms of professional development opportunities, then we might also be focusing on what does the teacher want to improve. Especially with senior teachers, then they may have something they specifically want to look at or that they're working on and so forth. So it's nice to have that discussion with people observing, whether that's a teacher trainer, a head teacher, or your peers. And then, of course, preparation, whether that's thinking about setup, where people are going to sit, what view you're going to have of the classroom, informing the students as well. And also that may also involve getting consent from institution or parents, depending upon your situation. So definitely things to think through. And we can talk more about that if you have specific questions there.
Yeah, once
Yes,
we get
go on.
in, once we, again, letting anybody who's just come in later on, is that right now we're going through some of the very basics just to get everybody on the same page, so that when we're discussing the process before, during, after, that you have a sense of what we're talking about, or we're all speaking the same language. If we get through this in about the next 10 minutes, then we're looking at providing a link and asking people to come in, some of you to come in and join on video in our Zoom room, and let's open it up for a full-on discussion.
Okay. So generally, I think we look at non-participation generally as an observer. We don't join in, but occasionally we have to be prepared for students potentially asking us questions, as happened when I went to visit a friend's university class, and then sometimes we end up switching roles. And that's okay in terms of the role I was playing there. But obviously we have to think about that sometimes as if it's a researcher position, it's very different. Observation tools, just generally, besides deciding whether or not we're going to use a video or not have a video, if we're there in person, then often we think about what kind of tools we use to observe in terms of field notes, whether we use an observation sheet that has a checklist, for example, looking at what type of things people do in their class, whether it's the interaction or whether teacher talking time, use of concept check questions and so forth. Or we might be taking a more log or journal approach where we basically write down what we see and so forth. And lastly, also thinking about our positioning. Are we going to sit in a fixed position, or are we going to be prepared to move around the classroom? And same as well with videoing. Sometimes people get someone to video a class, but they move around. How about you, Steve? What do you tend to do when you're observing?
I've done this so many times the same way. I basically use the logging method that you just discussed. I get there, a few minutes early. I try to joke around with the teacher, not get in their way, but just make them, aware that I'm here for a positive reason. I usually sit where I can see the students, maybe off to the side where I can see the students and the teachers. And then I tell the teacher I'm going to try to write down everything that happens for the next 50 or 60 minutes. So I said, don't be shocked at me furiously writing in the back. I'm writing everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and so I'm just basically trying to write all the teacher's actions, all the students' reactions, and putting timestamps on everything. So that's basically what I'm doing for the full 50, 60 minutes. And it comes out with pages and pages of notes.
So yeah, actually, when I was doing Teach to Learn about 15 years ago, it's pretty much what I did. We weren't able to record classes, so that was the record of what happened and so on. So that's what you needed to do. So thinking about what we do with those afterwards, I think one of the good practices we did where I was in my first job was that whoever did, for example, the teacher training, when I was a new teacher, they would make a copy of their observation sheet and they would pass it to me so that I would be able to look through things and ask questions, etc. And then we would discuss it a week later. So there was time to review and reflect, think about what had gone well, what needed work on, or what I needed help with. And then that would move into and inform the follow-up discussion. So that's quite a healthy process, even though it was also evaluative. So these days,
that's a very fortunate. It's ideal, but it's also fortunate. I was traveling around Japan, and I basically had to get back on a train after the lesson and the feedback. So it was totally, unfortunately, teach, have a 10-minute coffee break, then have a meeting together, then head home. So and I'm just saying that because what you're saying is ideal, and we try to reach those ideals whenever we can, and give it our best effort when we can't be ideal.
Right. And I think that, since the advent of video and being able to record classrooms more easily, etc., then it's got a lot easier in terms of being able to look at things again, but also look at things for yourself if you're the teacher, and you can see what you've done first. And if you're the trainer, then it allows you to allow teachers also to initiate first much more easily. There's a lot less that needs to be said when people see it themselves.
Yeah.
And then the other one is also sometimes using forums as a place for follow-up discussion, which we do in our T-cell course as well. So we'll move into that a little bit later. So this is a summary of some of the points. I'm not going to spend any time on here, but I will share this and then so that people can screenshot or whatever else later or come back to it. Okay.
Yeah.
Some of the take homes overall for the process, I think, is that there are learning curves for everyone. For us as a teacher being observed, for the teacher trainers who are doing the observation, and for the students, they have to get used to having people come in and observe their classes. And, you know, little kids, they always act differently when either there's a camera or there's somebody else observing.
Yeah.
And one of our teachers recently talked about also that, you know, seeing themselves multiple times allowed them to notice their habits, good and bad, and see the bigger picture over what they were doing over a period of time within a curriculum or a particular course, rather than kind of just one-off lessons. I thought that's really valuable too. Yeah. And just, yeah, it takes time to make these changes. And yeah, teacher development obviously doesn't happen overnight. And that's why we're all here.
I'm seeing a couple of really good comments here, Rajesh and Henna. Rajesh says, if observation is done impartially, keeping in mind all of the ifs and buts of the purpose, it will certainly be very helpful for both the teachers and as well for the students. Henna says the observer has to remember that the teacher knows more about that class and that group and the lesson than they do. And then Kevin Ryan adds a very nice question. My first question, which is also my first question, is after observing is, how do you think it went? You know, and that's what I wanted. I was introducing these first two comments to say that I approach every observation trying to just ask those questions to the teacher about, why did you do this? Do you usually do it this way? Are you satisfied with how it went? And do you want to change anything? And it's ultimately just trying to find out, the bottom line is whether they have rationale for what they're doing, or whether they're just doing it because it said to do it in the teacher's manual, or that's the way they did it when they were a student. And I've seen such a big difference between teachers who are thinking and teachers who are going through the motions of what the textbook or trainer or training or manual tells them what to do, even if they hate the activity they're doing. So I rarely say anything, it's just too gray. I rarely say anything's right or wrong. It's just, if you've got a reason why you do it that way, I go, okay, got it. On to the next one.
Yeah, and also the purpose of asking a lot of these questions sometimes is just to create that thinking, or to get people thinking about whether or not their practice is informed on previous experience or based on research, and having a research-informed approach to teaching and so forth. So serves a valuable purpose. In terms of feedback, harking back to the 80s pretty much, and you know, corporate feedback and etc. This also came into teaching. It's been around for ages. The sandwich technique. This was how my evaluations used to be done when I first started. I was told, you know, what went well, what didn't go so well, and what and how I might improve. And this is very common, and it's used in a lot of teaching situations. I'm kind of curious whether people in the audience also tend to use this or have experienced this type of feedback, or whether they have other approaches.
Well, I as you so nicely placed it in the 1980s, I would sometimes be observed going, yep, I just got my positive. Okay, there's my negative. So the trick is to be, I mean, I follow that generally, but the trick is not to get caught.
Right.
then it doesn't sound genuine
Hmm.
in some cases, but generally leading with what went well, and then yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes actually you can just have the positive and you don't need to spell out the negative because the recommendation implies what the negative was anyway, or what the area for
Yeah, yeah,
improvement is.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so a couple of years ago, there was a nice video on tag feedback used as a strategy in classroom to get students amongst themselves giving peer feedback. And we've also taken this and adapted it a little bit for teacher development. So in a nutshell, this is telling people what you liked, found interesting or surprising, asking questions, as Steve, you outlined earlier, about things that you didn't understand or want to know about, basically driven by curiosity, and then giving any suggestions or recommendations. A big part of doing this way is that it's less judgmental and evaluative, and it's more exploratory. It creates a whole different atmosphere and feeling towards how people are receiving feedback.
Mm. I have to jump in with Jenny Rothman's wonderful quote.
Mm.
It's leaving my page now. I got to drag it back.
Right.
Thank you, Jenny, so much. Reminds me of Tom Farrell's ideas on reflective practice.
Mm.
Observations help you understand what you're doing, why you're doing it, and whether or not you're doing what you think you're doing.
Right.
And then Anne, who goes by the nom de plume, Hannah, also says Tom Farrell's ideas have stuck with me since I first heard him talk. So
Yes.
yeah, that if anybody's interested in this whole reflective practice, go check out some of Tom Farrell's writings on that.
Yeah, and the video really has changed things, right? Between being able
Yeah,
to see what we think we do and what we actually do.
yeah. We're at 9:30. Let's keep
Okay.
moving. What do you got?
Okay, so just kind of some illustrations, whether you're teaching online or teaching face to face. One of the things that we found is, if you can post and share, within a group, this is shared privately in a group, and we kind of have the ability to share videos with parents' permission already, and also either description and also tag feedback, and then you can see other teachers able to comment and give feedback and so on. And this creates another layer we found of kind of before having face-to-face, where we can look at things else from the teacher's perspective first, and they get to comment on their own videos, and then other people respond to it. And so it's kind of changed where the initiation starts. It's more teacher directed or initiated.
Hmm.
Um, uh, but it's a process. And, over time, I think it gets easier to, write reflective comments and to, put things in like timestamps and be clearer about things. And also to develop the trust amongst teachers and your peers to give um, give feedback, and also not be afraid to give sometimes critical feedback, and but whilst being constructive, of course. But at the beginning, often what I see in groups is at the beginning people tend to just give positive feedback, maybe some suggestion, recommendation, and then later as the trust and rapport builds up, then it tends to be kind of more concrete feedback and looking at the challenges that they understand the other teachers are facing in their classrooms.
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, basically looking at the reasons for tag feedback, using video for being more teacher directed with peer-to-peer, as well as teacher trainer or mentor feedback and discussion. Okay.
Okay.
So
I've got my slide set up for the discussion that I wanted to offer up. And so I think we want to do two things since we're at that time. Is if anybody wants to come in and either on video or on audio only and kind of address the question or the statement I'm going to put up. Are you able to get the link into, yes, the link, the Zoom link we're now putting into the Facebook Live. And then we'll, if you want to make me a co-host as well, I can help with the waiting room stuff.
Okay. So I have put the link in. Hang on, wait a minute. I'm going to try and get rid of all the phone number stuff that we don't need. And the link is just coming in a moment. There's a link and also a password there.
Okay. Can I pop up the question I'm going to add in?
Yes, please do.
Okay.
And I will keep an eye out on who's coming in.
Good, good. And you don't have to come in at all. You're welcome to stay if you like to stay in the Facebook Live. That's fine too. But I'm would like to provoke this statement and say, let's debate, let's explore, let's share any of these ideas based on this comment that I sat down and tried to write the top 3 things we might do this coming year for our own professional development. I was trying to think of what it might be, and I came up with recording and then reflecting on your lessons is the best thing you can do in 2021 as a form of continuing professional development. Of course, you can go take an MA. You can do a CELTA, a Delta. You can do the iTDi TESOL certificate. You can do anything you want, but on your own, what's something that you can do? I just want to share what we've learned so much of over the past couple of years that I'd like to debate this as, is there anything better than this right now?
Yeah, and debate, discuss, ask questions. You're welcome to join us in the room. We're joined here now by Anne, Rhett, and Scott, and Steve, so that everybody can see on screen.
Yep. Stop sharing or?
Yeah, I'm just going to see if I can adjust this actually. I may be able to adjust this and change the sizing in just a moment. And Jenny's come and join us as well.
Great.
And let's see how this works on live. At the moment, live only shares the speaker view. That's why.
So I've actually opened up all of the videos we have, and it's covering my slide, but I'm still seeing the slide in Facebook Live. So that's not a problem right now.
Yeah, usually there's about a 20-second delay going to live to Facebook from the Zoom room. So please just.
But I'm saying I think the slide will just stay in Facebook Live because I've just opened up. I can see the 7 of us now on my own screen. So I think we're able to just keep talking.
Yes, that's right. So the slide is, so for people viewing on Facebook Live, you'll see the slide in large, but you'll see the speaker, the video of the speaker at the time, but they won't be able to see the group.
So we're welcome anybody who wants to start riffing on any of these. Some of you have intimate experience in recording and reflecting on your lessons. So just put your hand up if you'd like to say anything, or put your little icon button up if you would like to. We got lots more people coming in. That's great.
Okay, and I saw a hand from Rhett.
Go ahead, Rhett.
Nice to meet you. I'm Rhett.
Hey, nice to see you again so soon.
Yes, yes, yes. And I found that recording and reflecting on my lessons to be, very powerful. But one of the things that I really had to do is to actually organize my thoughts and then really sit down with those reflections, with those notes, and really make a plan to make the changes. It's like, you do all this hard work to record the lesson, to review the lesson, to reflect on the lesson. And then sometimes as busy as we get, we put it to the side and we forget about it. And then we really have to we have to bring our attention back to it and say, no, the most important thing is to do your next step with those reflections.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you. Anybody else? Jump in.
Yeah, it's really that taking action on it as well, isn't it, Rhett?
I was just going to say that because we've done so many of these over the past couple of years, that we have a lot of information that we could share with people. For example, if you wanted to just do all of this at home by yourself, I think the first thing would be who, if looking at the WH questions, maybe who would you want to be in this little group? And of course, yourself and a couple of other teachers. And then if possible, a kind of a mentor or somebody that you look up to, or somebody that's got more experience than you, or somebody you respect. And that's that kind of, I used to do a Skype study group back when Skype first came out. But just that idea of who should be involved in this kind of reflecting and recording of your lessons. Anybody comments on anything here? Go ahead, Rhett.
Well, you know, I took the iTDi Tesla course 2 times, and I'd like to take it a third. So if you guys have, if you're offering it, sign me up for again. But you know, like I worked with people. Like
I used to do a Skype study group back when Skype.
I worked with Scott, and that he was right next to me in the room right now. He was so full of ideas. It's just like I couldn't believe that I had the opportunity to learn from him, who was just another cohort member. And then I had, you know, the mentor teacher, which was Phil, who was also providing me a lot of feedback upon what I was doing. But then again, I had a new teacher, you know, new to her career in teaching. And then I got to see how it worked on like a beginner level, intermediate level, and all sorts of different levels. And it was really interesting to work with, you know, members of all levels and abilities, because you see things that you often forget, or you see things differently.
Anybody else jump in? Hey, this is a free for all. If you have comments about something Rhett just said, or something that just in general on your own experiences with either recording and or reflecting on your lessons, certainly with Zoom this past year, we've all, go ahead there, Renata.
I've been observed many times when I was traveling abroad. Usually the head of the English department said, like, first of all, come in our classrooms and do some observation in order to get to know the students and the way we teach. After that, usually they were coming in my classrooms, and there are some things they also learned from me, you know, and I shared my own experience, my own teaching techniques, and all together it was always friendly atmosphere. We you know, all together we're discussing my good points, their good points, try to find like the best way so the children get our attention, the best teaching, and be happy and motivated. I don't know why I can't hear you now.
Yeah, sorry, I somehow was I the one having feedback, Phil?
Yeah, there was a little bit feedback. So because of the delay, sometimes there's an echo if you have a second device, or if you have audio coming from Facebook Live at the same time.
Okay.
Yeah, but it may not be you, it could be any of us.
Okay.
So I've just
I can't with the screen sharing right now, I can't get to the participants list. Should we stop the screen sharing, or?
I can see the participant list.
Okay, if you can see it, that's great. We'll just keep it so that if we get any reverb. But anybody who has experience with either or is interested in recording more of their classes, Scott's got comments. Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, I find one of the things is really that started to help me the most was kind of had to do it. And at first it started really judgmental, but getting a group of teachers to work around and just observe, just starting basically just say, I saw you do this and the kids did this, and working from there, I think is really important. One way to help that is, like I found, was to give the people watching a task, like just watch who he talks to and just on a piece of paper mark down. Giving the observer a task actually helps make it less judgmental and kind of attack style, which a lot of like people at work, management tends to put it that way. It's like, let's judge them. And then, but the teachers I work with, when we do it, it's more just how can we improve our teaching? And for that, it's one of the best reflective practices I've come into. I think it really makes you look, are you actually doing what you think you're doing?
Yeah, which is what Jenny's going to come in here in a moment as well. Yeah, absolutely. And you've highlighted this idea of trust, hey? And not all of us have that kind of trust. And it's the one of the great books on trust says, with trust, you can do anything. There's no limits on what you can do with trust, but without trust, it's almost all or nothing kind of thing. But Jenny, go ahead. What were you going to talk to us about?
Oh, thank you. I just wanted to add a couple kind of comments. It's actually good that I'm kind of joining right in after the previous comment and talking about the trust, because I'm now responsible for doing observations in my role. And, we were just talking about, is it about evaluation or is it about learning, and we probably beat the message to death when we're talking to our teachers. We're telling them, like, we are not doing this for an evaluative purpose. We are doing it to help you learn. And one thing, I guess, for those of you who are out there that are in the position where you are doing the observations and giving feedback, lead by example, do it first. A lot of the teachers I've talked to, like, they're worried about it. And so I tell them they can come watch me first, because I think there's a lot to be said here too. Like, if you are doing an observation of other people, you should be willing to do the thing that you're asking those teachers to do yourself as an educator. Yeah. And I also think, kind of related to your point here about, like, the quote on the screen, as I've gotten more and more into the administrative part, I've realized I'm forgetting about my own classroom more and more. And so this,
am I.
In terms of the thing, like, the best thing you can do in 2021 is this, like, I think I'm going to try to make a concerted effort to actually start focusing on my classroom again, because I spend so much time helping other teachers with their classroom that I'm like, mine matters too. So thank you for posting this. It's a good, clear reminder of that.
Yeah, Jenny, I've seen your name all over the place. I don't know that we've met before, but I love what you said earlier, that quote. And I'm sitting here saying, boy, let's keep in touch, because I have exactly the same feeling as I get more coordinating programs and developing new programs in my school. I just have less time. And because I've got so much experience now, I fall back on things that aren't as good as maybe they could be. So I would love to observe your lesson and let you observe my lesson. There we go.
There's our plan going forward. And I have heard of you as well. So
okay, good.
I also want to point out,
you've not met.
And just before I mute myself, I wanted to point out the comment they made is almost a verbatim quote of Tom Farrell's work. So please do not take what I said as 100% my work. It's almost verbatim what Tom himself said.
Yeah, that's great.
So great. I just didn't want to put the citation in.
Right.
All right.
That's
Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny.
Anyone else? Come on. Say something. If you have never said something, just say something. Hey, Kevin.
Okay, yeah, I think there is one thing that could be actually better than recording yourself, even though recording yourself is wonderful. And I've learned a lot to get students to record me while I'm making announcements. And that usually boils down to like 5 or 10 minutes of the class so that we can take care of that. But I've also noticed that the students, after they videotape me and we sit down and look at me, that they are also more involved in the class, and they become more, assertive in the class and more participatory. But there is something else that might be even better, would be to do team teaching with another person or another teacher. And when you have to hammer out a class in between two people, then you really get down to the basics.
Yeah, have you? I'm actually starting one of those this April. with Anne Maeda, a wonderful, wonderful teacher, and I'm excited and nervous and everything all at once. But yeah, it's really challenging as well, I think. Yeah. Anyone else? Hey,
Sorry,
Scott.
just jump back in. I think one other thing that I think to really help people start out too is instead of videotaping yourself, just videotape the students. Kind of when it starts you off on the right track is instead of saying like, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, just videotape the students, not even you there. And that way, when you sit there, you just see your reactions in the students. What do you actually do? It helps focus more. It's not about you. It's about the learners and what's happening there. And that's what we're trying to focus on. So by just not even videotaping you in front of the whiteboard, just videotape the students itself and see, can you see yourself from their viewpoint and what their actions are? It helps remove some of the personal involvement, I think.
Yeah, yeah. And that to me, that leads into the whole area of what are your goals in class? What do you value? You know, in terms of if you want to actually improve what you're doing. I wrote myself a list of 5 different things. I don't know if I can even get to them. Let's see.
Just going while you're looking, I'm going back to.
I got it. Yeah, I got it right there.
Okay.
But again, I think everybody should kind of think about making their own list of what they value in their class. So for me, the very first one was I spent years teaching and never thinking about, was anybody learning anything? I was so, full of anxiety about trying to figure out how to teach. I forgot about the learning side of it. So we could do a whole webinar on just that kind of input, intake, uptake. Number 2, can you see the students' effort, their motivation, their inspiration is really important to me. Finding a balance between complexity, accuracy, and fluency is really important to me. Are the students challenged but still comfortable? Are they engaged? And number 5 is certainly not the 5th most important. It's right up near the top, actually, but are the lesson goals and purposes clear and transparent? So, Phil's talked about having different focuses. The people that go through the iTDi TESOL certificate course do 12, throughout a year, they do 12 recordings of their classes. And the first, how can you introduce that, Phil?
Yeah, so basically, the first one is just to get everything set up and record your class, and there's no specific teaching focus or anything else. It's just about getting comfortable with the camera, getting students comfortable. And I think that's really crucial. Even when, like, for example, when I did a university, a recording of my university class quite a long time ago, my students said to me, "Oh, we don't want to be on camera." And I said, well, okay, I'll just record myself teaching. And they were okay with that. But I think if I'd done what Kevin had done and let them record and put the camera in their hands, then that would have been an interesting game changer as well. So I'd definitely like to try that next time. And then after I was recorded first, the second time I did a recording, they were more willing to be on camera and so on. And, the point was that it would be for them, and they were going to record certain activities and watch themselves using English and so forth. And then they found that interesting to see, and also be able to see at the end of the semester their own improvement over time. So it has to be, valuable for our students as well, if possible.
And you were saying that for about the first out of 12 that you did with teachers on the TESOL certificate, the first 8 or 9 were focused on different areas of teaching, right?
Yes. Thank you for returning my focus as well.
Thank you.
So yeah, sometimes there are specific areas that we're focusing on our teaching, whether we're focusing on vocabulary and how we present it or how we practice it in our classrooms. And so as we work on particular areas, it's useful to then focus on how we're doing that in our classroom and so forth. But you know, over time, sometimes there are things that you do on a training course and you don't feel you've quite got where you want to. So it's really important to have opportunities as teachers to say, hey, look, you know, I'd like to focus on this still. Can I do another observation focusing on this same area? And so we try and make sure that there is that flexibility built in. And then as you know, you progress through the course, then we don't decide what teachers are going to focus on. It's up to them for the last few videos to say, you know, what area of their teaching, whether it's motivation or student interaction or whatever else they choose for themselves. And I think that's really more about moving towards the development end rather than the evaluation side.
Mm. Whenever you mention anything like that, it goes back to that, the difference between following and leading as a teacher. You know, I literally for 15 years, I was the most obedient teacher, that I followed the training I got. I followed the textbooks, the teacher's manuals, and so many times I taught sections of lessons that I hated or thought was no good. And it was for me, it was when I went into the MA and you know, got into a class situation with other teachers that I decided I'm going to stop doing all those things that don't work in my context in Japan. I'm going to do things that I know work and build on that. Go ahead, Renata. Go ahead. You're muted, I think.
Yeah. I feel the same. After 26 years of teaching, it's not about the teacher's books. It's filling the classroom, filling your group, filling your students. If they feel that you care, if they feel that they're motivated and you motivate them, then any subject, everything that's written in the teacher's book, you can transform into, how can I say, you can transform it the way you know your students will learn it, because you are the one who knows your students, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You will find the best way to teach it. Okay, we don't have to follow the teacher's books, right?
Yeah.
Our goal is to so the students get to know the material or vocabulary or the grammar or whatever. There is one example I would like to share with you. It happens to me all through these years that when they do these tests, the students, they have no idea what does be mean, you know? It's like I be a student. And they usually write I be a student. And every time I say, there is a nice story behind this B. B is a pregnant woman, not with twins, but triplets, MREs. So it's the big mama, you know, with the big stomach, and I draw it on the whiteboard. So what I want to say is, I usually make up stories so they remember it. It doesn't matter whether they're adults or young children, they remember it lifetime.
Sure. Thank you, Renata. Cool. Anyone else? Chance to add something to the discussion or ask a question or anything you like? I had another thought and I've lost it. And it's, you know, when you try to find that thought and it'll hit me at 3 a.m. and I'll.
I think a key word for this would be empathy. That being able to see something from the other person's perspective. With the video, when the students were observing me taking the video, I found that as they're sitting down, their perception of me, I have this big belly, that I look tremendously fat from that perspective. And I never realized that kind of thing, that, you know, even when they're sitting down for so long, they sit down for 6 or 8 hours a day in these really hard chairs, and how they're feeling. And just to be able to see that and notice that takes you a long way to improving your class.
Oh, cool. Nice comment. In addition to that, I remember one of my first videos I did of myself, and I taught 90% of my lesson to the right. And I ignored everybody on the left side of the classroom. This is 15 years ago. And then I was so shocked because when I thought about it, I thought, absolutely. I constantly talk to the people on the right side of the classroom, you know, Renata.
Yeah, I want to add something here. When I was doing my CELTA, and there were the students, my colleagues, other CELTA colleagues, and the tutors. Maybe because of the experience, when I started teaching, like you said, they were writing everything, even the language, the grammar and everything. And I felt when I was observed by these Cambridge tutors, I felt that I put iron curtain. It was just me and the students I was concentrating on, I know that they're observing and writing. I knew it, but I didn't feel their presence. I don't know how I can explain it, but maybe because of the many years of teaching.
Yeah, sure. And it's a good idea to just focus on the students. Yeah.
So I'd just like to say we've reached 9 o'clock, and for anyone who's been joining us on Facebook Live, then thank you very much for being with us there. We're just going to wrap up a little bit, but we will keep we'll keep the Zoom open. So if you'd like to join us in for the next 30 minutes, we'll still be here. And everyone who's in the Zoom room already, then please, you're welcome to stay. I will be stopping the streaming to Facebook in a couple of minutes. But just lastly, I wanted to also do a quick roundup, just 1 or 2 minutes, if you can bear with me, of what we're also got ahead coming up.
Do you want to share any images?
Can unshare the screen.
Yeah, there we go.
For a second. Okay. And so, yeah, today we've been talking about classroom observation and getting it right, moving more from the judgmental side of classroom observation and evaluation to a more professional development orientated side, and looking at some of the ways that we can do that, focusing on the process with consideration to the people and the purpose. We will be back, should be back next month for our next monthly roundup. In the meantime, we have Scott Thornbury Dogma ELT course starting up in March. If you tried to get in just recently and couldn't because it was full, then please just let us know if you're still interested, and we will contact you if you'd like to try and get in on the next one. And yep, that's the third sellout course actually. So please do get in early. And if you want notifications, then you can sign up for ELT newsletter or sign up for a waiting list. And then coming up in a couple of months' time, we're looking forward to a new series of courses called Great Minds in Language Education. Welcome back Scott Thornbury, Dorothy Zemak, Kevin Ryan, who's here with us now, and also Stephen Herder.
You don't have that page up, do you?
I don't, but all of the links are also on our Facebook page and can be found there. Okay, so thank you once again for joining us on Facebook Live.
Yay, thank you.